Hey there, everyone. I'm Samuel Johnson, and welcome back to the Phantom Perspectives. And today we're going to be looking at episode 49 of Danny Phantom Destabilized. And in this episode, we get the return of Danielle. In this case, though, it's not a friendly visit. As for those of you who've been keeping up with the show or slash watching the vlogs or whatever, the last time we saw Danielle, she was not doing so well. As in, actually, I should probably do a refresher first. For those of you who don't remember, Danielle is a younger, gender bent version of Danny. Not from another universe. She is a clone. She was created by Vlad in an attempt to try and create his own perfect Danny clone to have as a son. But unfortunately, before that one, he made 4 clones. Danielle, which was one of them. However, a common problem that all the clones, including Danielle, had was that they were destabilizing. They were not only imperfect, their genetic structure was just inherently wrong. And unfortunately, they were just falling apart at the seams, and Danielle was no exception. As such, while she at the end of the last time we saw her, she ultimately became an ally of Danny and helped him fight off Vlad. This time, however, unfortunately, the destabilization thing was not fixed, and in this episode, we kind of get that peaked as Danielle is just kind of falling apart at the seams right now. She realizes she needs help, so she's returned to Amity Park to try and get help from Dan to try and find Danny and see if they can find a solution to this. However, since Vlad's now the mayor of Amity Park, and because he has a little spy bots everywhere, as we've established earlier, he knows that she's back in. However, he wants to know why she's lasted as long as she has, despite while all the other clones just kind of fell apart so quickly. My guess is because she's not using her ghost powers as much because, well, they showed that that the more she used her powers, the more she started to fall apart. But whatever. So he calls in Valerie, who honestly I kind of was wondering where she was throughout this whole season. Because the last time we saw her was I think in season 2 when Plasmus gave her armor her badass upgrade, and it turns out that Vlad's got her on speed dial, which I suppose kind of makes sense. He admitted to her he's the one that supplied her with the armor and so forth, so I think it makes sense. As such, he calls her in and tells her about Danielle coming into Amity Park, and he feeds her a load of bull saying that Danielle wants to destroy him and whatever. So he wants Valerie to bring her in, which Valerie is more than happy to do. However, so Valerie manages to track down Danielle, but when she finds her, Danielle is in her human form because she's trying to get some food. So she manages to steal some apples, and Valerie sees her, but the detector is still saying that Danielle is nearby, and Danielle sees Valerie there, and she starts freaking out. Valerie thinks that Danielle Phantom is after Danielle Fenton, or Danielle Fenton. So she tries going after her, trying to keep her safe, but unfortunately Danielle ran into an decrepit building, and so when Valerie runs in after her, they both wind up hitting a loose board that's supporting a main support beam. As such, when Valerie steps on it, it causes the roof to fall in, and so Danielle goes ghost and saves her. But unfortunately, she went ghost right in front of Valerie, so now Valerie sees that she's half human. But at that point, upon learning that Danielle is the ghost she wants, she immediately zaps her and knocks her out. In the meantime, though, when Danielle wakes up, Valerie starts telling her that she wants to about what she wants to do, and Danielle says that no, I'm not. And actually, Valerie says that Vlad told her all about how Danielle is going to go hunt her. Danielle, of course, says that's not true, and that the only reason she came back to Amity Park at all was because she wanted Danny's help. And so the instant Valerie hears that, she starts pretending that she wants to meet Danny, and so she decides to let Danielle go with the intent of using her as bait. In the meantime, Danny has helped his parents with an experiment involving this ecto whatever. It's essentially a serum that, when it's applied to ghosts, is supposed to pretty much destabilize them and make them disappear into nothing. But Jack, being Jack, instead just screwed it up, and instead it makes ghosts stronger. So after they corral another experiment, Danny goes out on patrol with Sam and Tucker, But when he goes out, he runs into Danielle, who immediately on finding he pretty much ditches Sam and Tucker. I'm not even joking. Even they realize they've been ditched. But they but Danny is able to. But when Danny learns that Danielle is still falling apart, he says that he's going to help her because they're still family. Unfortunately, at that point, Valerie shows up and blasts them both and knocks them out. She can't. Of course, she gives Danielle to Vlad, while Danny himself. Well, for Danny, she instead locks up. And and the reason she's locking him up is because she wants to get as much intel out of him as she can so she can be the best ghost hunter in Amity Park, which I'm going to address this issue right now. I don't like what they did with Valerie in this episode. And I know that with Valerie, here's the thing with Valerie. Valerie has really leaned towards hating Ghost in the last few times we saw her. But it's kind of been a complex thing, and honestly, it's kind of been and honestly, you can kind of understand where she's coming from. She's got misinformation. She sees things. She only knows so much of the story. She only knows so much of the stories, and even the last time we saw her, she was dead set on hunting Danny, which I don't think I liked. Because again, the bigger threat was right there. The threat was right there, and I think she should have easily realized that Danny was fighting it. And that kind of continues into this one, because unfortunately, she acts a bit more villainous in this episode. She would kind of go like how an anime rival would react. Like, I think a good example I can think of is Copen from Azure Striker Gunvolt. If you haven't played that, it's short version. It's a world where people have superpowers. People are called adepts. The superpowers are called Septima, and your main character is an adept that can control electricity named Gunvolt. But I'm getting off topic. The rival in that game was a character called Copen, a human who. Hold on a second. Sorry about that. If you probably might have. Quick explanation. I'm using my phone as a light right now. It's very cloudy, so the lighting's not as good as I would like. So I'm using my phone right now. It's just short version. College is important stuff. Anyway, sorry about that. Anyway, as I was saying, comparison. Copen in Azure Striker Gunvolt is the rival character, the typical anime rival who the main character clashes with, and he's the rival in that while he and Gunvolt will fight adepts, Gunvolt only goes after evil adepts. Copen hates all adepts, and Valerie was why I'm making the comparison is because Valerie is a similar case kind of. She just hates ghosts, but here's the thing, she's also she kind of also did have a regular reason. An actual reason. She wanted to hunt ghosts because they were causing problems. They hurt people, and from her experiences, she was caught in the middle. And in the beginning, you can kind of understand why she hated Danny so much, because in her eyes, he was the one responsible. But she spent more time with him. She did backpedal when Danny was there with Technus. Though again, I still make the argument that she should have realized Technus was at least there, and that Danny was trying to stop her. But here she is acting a bit more villainous, holding Danny captive, to actually planning to torture him to get what she wants, which is pretty much just all the information that he knows about ghost stuff, so that she can be a better ghost hunter. It's villainous, and honestly, I don't really like it that much. And she's just kind of a bit more. I feel like she's a little more shallow. It feels a little out of character, but I don't know. It could be in character with her, but at the same time, I don't like it. I think it's the same. I don't like the backpedaling, is what I'm saying. Her going back to how she was, but Danny does manage to get through to Valerie when he says that Danielle is half human, that she is still human, and that Vlad was not, and that he does tell her that Vlad is not a good person. She doesn't believe it, but she says that regardless of what she says, he wants to destroy Danielle, and if he destroys the ghost half, the human half's going with her. And while Valerie is a bit hesitant, she ultimately realizes that she doesn't want a little girl to die. And so she and Danny kind of come to an agreement that she'll help him save Danielle, and then he'll tell her whatever the heck she wants. As such, they go to Fenton. They make a quick pit stop at Fenton Works because Danny wants to pick up the Ecto destabilizer or whatever it is. The thing that does the exact opposite of what it's supposed to. Well, in the meantime, Vlad wants to dissect Danielle for what she's got to figure out why she's lasted this long. Though again, I think it's because she's kind of tried to keep the use of her powers down to a minimum. Excuse me. But the problem, but when he realized, and so when he has his computer scan Danielle, he only gets so much data, and so he decides that he's just gonna finish the job and destabilize her completely, and then he can examine the goopy leftovers. As such, however, he also gets a security alert when he sees that Danny and Valerie are on their way. And so he does the clone trick that we saw him do in Eye for an Eye, where he clones himself and one's human, one's a ghost. And so he has his human half hide in a sorry about that, dry throat. Anyway, he has his human half hide in a broom closet, while his ghost half goes to actually do the fighting to make it look like he's innocent when they arrive. And so Danny and Valerie do fight Vlad, and and Vlad manages to fool Valerie by pretending that Vlad Plasmus was the one that broke in and hit him, and he's torturing a little girl. It's dumb though. At the same time, he's the one that ordered her to go after her. Maybe she could. I don't know. I'd still think that she could still call BS or what. She could still call BS or whatever. Like, how would she explain that Vlad was the one that sent her after her? Why is Vlad Plasmus here with a lab in his helm? Sorry, she could still ask questions, but I don't know. But unfortunately, Danielle is still falling apart, and so Danny and Valerie are able to blast Vlad Plasmus, the Plasmus clone away, and long enough for Danny to administer the antidote. And while at first it looks like it fails, it thankfully actually does work, as Danielle's able to reform and is now back at full strength, with herself now stabilized. Which it allows her to at this point just wail on Vlad. And while it isn't as satisfying as you would kind of hope, as it doesn't, it's still really nice just seeing her continually blast at Vlad and just deck him and punch. It's nice, and I like it. I like it a lot. As such, Valerie and Danielle leave. Danny asks Valerie to take Danielle and go, while he confronts Vlad, and Vlad absorbs his ghost clone again, and he tells Vlad to leave Valerie out of this or he'll expose her. To which Vlad responds with he could expose him, which is pretty much the same deal they made when they first met. But bottom line, though I think Danny could easily counter that he would probably just do it, but whatever. So Danny flies out, and Danielle says that now that she's stable, she wants to go and do her own thing, and she's glad that Danny helped her. They have a nice. She gives him a nice kiss on the cheek. It's a familial kiss. No, I don't want to hear any shipping. And she flies off, and Danny does try to keep his end of the bargain and says that he'll go quietly with Valerie, but Valerie says that he can just go and that she'll hunt him later, which I think is kind of nice. Still showing that I think that's kind of nice. Maybe she's trying to be not. I don't know. It still feels like that she could still be a little hesitant. I don't know. But after Danny leaves, Valerie decides that she wants to go check on Vlad to be sure he's okay. But as she wanders in, she sees Vlad having his own little villainous monologue, and she sees him turn into Vlad Plasmus, and she realizes that Danny was right all along. And so she vows that she'll one day hunt Vlad, which I don't think ever happens because this is the penultimate episode, so whatever. But honestly, this is actually a pretty good episode, if just for the emotionals, just for Danielle and everything with her. Like, seeing her start to destabilize more is kind of a little scary and a little horrific. Like, you're seeing her, like with all the other clones, you saw them get melted in a way into goop, and with her, the most you saw of her, and the last time we saw her was goop starting to pile at her feet and then get absorbed back into her when she started limiting her powers. But here, you're seeing her start to literally melt away. Her hands start turning to goo, ectoplasmic slime. You can see her face start. You see her body starting to melt away. It's actually really horrific to behold, especially when you see her getting weaker and weaker, and her voice just getting quieter, and it's actually pretty it's actually kind of scary. And when you actually, and so when you want, and it kind of, and it you don't want this to happen, especially since it's happening to a little girl. It's pretty horrific to behold. On top of that, it's actually I do like seeing the struggle that Danny has trying to help her. Like she's family, and again, I think the Danny fandom is strongest when it focuses on the ties between the Fenton family. And while Danielle is technically a clone of Danny, she is still considered a part of the Fenton family, even if the other Fentons aren't aware of her existence. So it actually to see Danny wanting to go to see Danny actually wanting to go to these lengths is actually really interesting. And he's not, and admittedly, he doesn't try to talk down Valerie at this point. But the fact that, but he's so concerned for Danielle, he tells Valerie that he'll give her whatever she wants as long as they help Danielle. And I think that's really nice. And even seeing her melt, and when Danny gives her the destabilizer and it doesn't seem to work, while it does last for like a few seconds, it's actually kind of scary. Like, you see that her just melt away into a puddle of goo right in front of Danny's face, and it's just like, what the hell? Admittedly, the emotion is it turns into a bit of odd when her head reforms from the pile and she runs to the pile, but it's actually kind of gets you, because you see, and so but at the same time, it does make it more emotionally triumphant when she gets back up and just wails on Vlad, which I think is really nice, and I think that's what the glue that holds this episode together. Just Danielle is the glue that holds it all together. Seeing her actually seeing her come back and seeing her actually getting worse and going to Danny and seeing it and just, the clock is, that the clock's ticking for her and that if nothing is done, she's going to turn into a pile of goo like all the other clones. It's actually, you really want her to come out on top because, again, she's a kid. She's younger than Danny, so you don't want to see her go, and she's, to see Danny wanting to help her is nice, and and again, I like that, and it's even nice that, and again, we still get, a few nice moments of Valerie. I still don't like what they ultimately did, the Flanderization did kind of spread to her a bit, the backpedaling, but it is nice that she's willing to help Danielle, and personally, I hope that this would be the time when Danny finally told her that he was Danny Fenton, which I think probably would have, which I think might have either, which I think could still be very nice considering how much he hates Danny Phantom and how she and Danny Fenton are, well, they're not an item anymore. They've still had a lot of good experiences. I think that could have been better. I think that would still have been nice, and it would have been cool if they actually did, if Danny took this opportunity to finally explain to her what's going on, but at the same time, yeah, there are flaws, I'll admit. For starters, the ending. The ending could work. Admittedly, the ending probably could have worked if this wasn't the penultimate episode. Namely, the fact that Valerie now knows that Vlad Plasmius and Vlad Masters are one and the same. And I feel like this could also make her set a precedent. Like, because she knows Danielle is half ghost, and she and Danny Phantom are close, and she was present when Danielle called Danny cuz, so she knows that they're family, so maybe she could put two and two together, so, like, it could have easily led to more stuff, like her putting two and two together, maybe realizing that Danny Phantom and Danny Fenton are one and the same, but again, this is the penultimate episode of the series, so laying those seeds for future plots, unfortunately, is not a viable option, which is sad, because it looks like because it seems like this episode was made it feels like they didn't know, it feels like that they were expecting more to happen after this episode, but then again, this is season 3, the series that, even at its best, still has a lot of problems. And unfortunately, so nothing actually comes of the revelation that she knows that Vlad Masters and Vlad Plasmus are one and the same, or that maybe she knows half of us exist now, so that's going to be a problem. And even then, there are still other things. Like, Vlad is still written cartoonishly, and I think he should understand that Danielle is not... Like, what does he hope to gain from learning how she lasted this long? The answer is simple. She limited the use of her power. She's half human. She could have just transformed into a human and done other things, and that would have slowed down the degenerative process. And again, we still have some backpedaling with Valerie, which I didn't like. But again, the real strength of the episode is just from seeing Danielle as she gets worse, and seeing Danny want to trying to help her, and just that nice little familial bond. It's just nice and cute, and I think that's the best part of the episode. And since that encompasses a lot of the episode, I think that on the whole, I think this is a pretty good and just a nice, adorable episode. So, yeah. I think that's really all I have to say then. Yeah. Thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson, and tune in next week as we take a look at the final episode of Danny Phantom. And once again, I'm going into this one blind, like most of this season, and if what I've heard about this episode is true, we're going to be in for a bumpy ride. So, yeah. Hope to see you next week. Take care.